Hi, I'm Rachel Olson, founder of Best Mom Products, where mompreneurs share their adventures in business. Today I'm talking with Cydney Smith, founder of Mompreneur Wellness, spirited nutrition for entrepreneur moms. She coaches mom entrepreneurs to fuel their success with healthy eating. Listen and we will learn how Cydney found her niche, how she created and markets her consulting and online business, and the successes and challenges she's had in evolving her business model. So welcome, Cydney. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so I know we talked before, but I'd love for everyone to hear what is Mompreneur Wellness and how you got started in this.
Great, sure. Well, I'm a health coach, and so my practice is helping people to make nutrition, diet, and lifestyle changes, basically focusing on eating healthier, whole foods and real foods. I got started doing this back in 2007, 2006, when one of my daughters, my second daughter, became very sick when she was between 2 and 3. She just became very sick. I had to pull her out of childcare, and I started looking for ways to help her, and it turned out she was gluten intolerant, and then we later found out had celiac disease, which means she cannot eat any gluten. And I always considered myself a healthy eater and our family healthy eaters, but when we could no longer grab any bagels or a slice of pizza or a cookie or a muffin on the run, I started realizing that maybe I wasn't eating as healthy as I thought. And at the time, I had a busy health life coaching practice with my husband, and we worked with young adults, and it was like everything just had to stop. It was like all the balls were in the air already because I had 2 young children, and everything kind of came crashing down because of this food issue. And as I started researching, looking for more information, I came across the training program that I eventually went to, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where I went originally to help myself and my family and my daughter to eat healthier, and then realized it was the career that I wanted to do. So after completing that training program, I started working with clients, doing health coaching and lifestyle changes, and I realized that I naturally was drawn to working with moms. And from there, I found that my most successful clients in terms of their success as well as the relationship we created was with busy moms who are entrepreneurs. They were either creating a lifestyle business for themselves, maybe they were trying to work flex time, partnering with other people, doing consulting, whatever, but someone that was trying to maintain a professional career while being present at home. And from there, Mompreneur Wellness was created.
Okay, very interesting. That's great. I mean, as you know, obviously I'm a mom of 2 young ones too, and I find it it's very difficult. It's the biggest challenge I feel like even my husband and I talk about, like how do you get your kids to eat healthy and how do you eat healthier? And just by you saying, I just think about the past weekend and I just think, oh, it's summer, it was the weekend, and you know, school's starting soon and we'll get into the habit. But I want to talk to you, I love what you're doing. I want to talk to you more about the business aspects of it. You kind of talked about, you know, your prior life, you were a professional, an environmental studies professor at Vermont. Right. So this is a big change, but you've been doing this for a while. So what is the first thing you did when you had the idea?
Well, when I first had the idea, I didn't have a clear niche. I just knew I wanted to do health coaching, and so I just did what the training program I went to told me to do. I started marketing and talking to everyone that I knew, but I started to realize that a lot of it didn't feel very authentic for me, just sort of, you know, being like, hi, I'm your health coach, please hire me kind of feeling. And so then I really started to get clear on, like, you know, if I'm going to create a business for myself, I want it to be something I really love doing. And at the end of the day, that it supports us financially, but it also supports my own, you know, motivation to show up at my job the next day. So I hired a branding coach to help work with me because I knew I wanted to work with moms, but I also knew that I didn't want to just market myself generically to moms, that I wanted it to be very authentic to my own personality and the kind of work that I did. So I worked with a branding coach who really took my language, which I felt like I would give her, you know, paragraphs of work, and she'd give me 2 sentences back. And she'd be like, oh, well, you want to do this. I was like, oh, yeah, that's it, exactly. So she really helped me to refine my message. So it was what I knew I wanted, but I didn't have a language for it yet.
Okay.
And so once I got that language, I became more clear on what I wanted to offer.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. Can you give me an example of something that she did? Like, you gave her 2 paragraphs of what, and what would she come back with?
Yeah, well, so, you know, I had this kind of mom category. And I knew I didn't want to be like the mom, the health coach saying like, here's how to have the perfect meal every day, your sit down balanced meal that you spent an hour in the kitchen doing, because I don't do that. And so I kept talking to her, and I was like, I want it to be people who are really busy. They've got something going on in their life. And so I had this elaborate vision of all these words that you needed to say. And she's like, oh, so you want to work with entrepreneur moms who are creating a lifestyle for themselves and help them eat healthier. I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly it. So there was a lot of that went on. So I think I wasn't 100% clear on who my market was, but she was able to see who my market was, even though I knew who the individual was I wanted to work with. And that was just great for me, because then I started to be able to find my community or my tribe on Facebook and on Twitter, and when I went out to talk to people. So yeah, it was very helpful for me.
Yeah, so when you were done going through and the branding coach helped define who you are and what your message is, then did you feel like you had something that you can go out there to apply to your website, social media, when you're talking to people? Did you come up with like a 90-second pitch I've heard people do, or something like that?
I did. I went through social media avenues a lot, Facebook and Twitter, and I really just looked for people that I wanted to connect with. The part about working with this branding coach, I was very clear I wanted it to be my own authentic business. So I felt very comfortable that if it was someone that I was interested in, they would possibly be interested in what I was offering as well, because I knew who that market was. So I first just started connecting with anybody on Facebook and Twitter that I thought was in this kind of mom entrepreneur market. And then I would just start to refine it. I would, be working with a client, and some things would come up. A lot of times, say I would have 10 clients in a week, and 4 of them would be asking me the same questions. I'd be like, oh, other people must be thinking this too. And so that's what I would use for, throwing out things on Facebook or Twitter that week, or in my newsletter. And by doing that, I really started to create a lot of dialogue with like-minded moms and entrepreneurs on social media.
Yeah, so how easy or hard is it to get people to engage in a dialogue with you? When you said I want to understand that, and also when you said you were just reaching out to people on Facebook and Twitter, like on Facebook, were you just typing in like entrepreneur mom group, or were you looking for groups of people? How exactly did you do that?
I think at first it actually made more one-to-one connections through Twitter. And when I hesitated when you asked me about the 90-second elevator pitch, and I paused because I was like, yeah, I had that, but I ditched it right away, because that wasn't the way to engage in dialogue at all. So really the dialogue came from literally connecting like you would anywhere. So someone might say like, oh, looking for an idea for dinner, and I'd be like, oh, here's an idea. Or they might say like, just got back from horseback riding with my daughter, and I'd be like, oh, my child horseback rides too. And it was very organic in that way. And then at times, I've had an offer, or I had a newsletter that I would put out. So those would be more formal, pitches, or just putting out my product kind of information. But generally, I just started connecting with other healthy oriented mothers, busy moms, and it was, it's almost weird how effortlessly that connection happened. And then, someone might say, oh, well, I'm doing this webinar show. Do you want to be part of it? Or we have this group, Healthy Mom, Healthy Babies. Do you want to join with us on this tweet chat? And once that started happening, it became very effortless to start connecting with new people.
Okay, so how long would you say that took from the time that you launched your business to the time that you had a decent amount of clients?
Yeah. I feel like it sounds scary when I say this, but I would say about 1.5 years. But with that said, I was working part-time. I still had my young kids. I had my foot in my other business a little bit. So I was not anticipating this business becoming, completely full right off the bat. So I always felt like it was moving forward in a way that I'd hoped. I don't know if I could have made it happen faster, if that was my goal at that point, but I felt like I was getting enough people interested. I was getting clients at a very relaxed pace. That was good for me. And so it just sort of evolved to where it is now. And it was a lot of panic too, because there were times where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm putting all the time into this. What am I doing? This is so silly, because you can't attribute an hourly wage to social media when you're on it at night on this tweet chat. So there were times where I felt anxious about it. But overall, I was finding a lot of support from it, both with my business, but also personally as a mom at home trying to start something. So I felt very comfortable with the direction I was going.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I feel the same way. I put a lot of time and effort into the video interviews that I'm doing, and it really is a hobby. You know, I don't have a business model right now, but I love it. And every time I talk to somebody like you, it motivates me. Or, you know, I even read your free ebook, you know, the 10 steps to, you know, making changes in your diet that are easy to make because you already eat these foods. And I thought, okay, the squeeze lemon in your water to like make the, you know, acid and balance your body the first thing in the morning. I'm like, I can do that. You know, it wasn't like an overwhelming change. I was like, I'm going to buy lemons today after I talked to her.
Awesome. That's so great. That's exactly what I hope happens.
But let's talk a little bit about that. You know, I find what interesting when I talked to you before is you're a health coach, and you are, I feel, based on, you know, looking at your website, and, you know, you have these free ebooks, you're writing a book, and you have created like 4 or more actual wellness programs. So I want to understand for the business person out there who found their passion and they're going to be doing some sort of consulting service, what advice can you give them on, you know, why did you create these programs? How did you write your free ebook? And how successful has that been? What results has that provided?
Okay, that's great. Well, with the ebook, doing an ebook is great. It's super easy to do. It's had many different forms, so I definitely at first felt like I needed to give like the top 10 best health tips ever. You know, like these are the best things you could ever do. And then I had to step away from that, being like, you know, that's not what it's about, and there is no perfect health tips. So I had to really think like, who's my market? Who do I want to connect with? And then I really tried to draw from the experiences I have from my clients and the conversations I have with my clients, but also the other moms that I come into contact with, and create something that was really practical and fit my brand. It's great doing that because I hand that out. Sometimes if I do get asked to do a talk someplace, I'll bring those. I say you can get more information on my website, sign up for my newsletter. And then when someone comes to my website, they see that report, it sounds intriguing, they give me their email address, and then they're on my list. And so I feel like I'm providing a value for them in exchange for them, you know, trusting me at some level to come and show up in their inbox. So, well, I like writing, and so I've always wanted to write a book, and so I started to do that, the thought of writing a book, and this was a piece of that. And it was already, you know, I have a lot of things that I give my clients when I work with them that the book is based on. So this was kind of pulling that together and polishing it up, trying to do a combination of providing value as well as presenting my type of language and having something that I could use while I'm looking for a publisher for my book.
Okay, and so your book, is your book called Spirited Nutrition?
Yes, it is.
So where are you at in the process of writing that?
Yeah, I say it's like pretty much done, but I think it's the same thing, like where you're pretty much moved when you move almost everything. You think you're really good, and you have all those like lamps and pictures left. That's where I feel like I'm at. I have all the content there, but I know that when it gets to the fine-tuning of all of the grammar and sort of making it all flow, I've left that for the dream of having someone that wants to publish it and provide me with an editor that'll clean it all up. But so that's where I'm at with that. I put my proposal out a few places this summer, and I'm kind of sifting through that. And either way, if that avenue feels like it may not manifest for me, or it may just not be the right choice, then I'm going to do like a mid-tier publisher, in which case I will have to seek out an editor myself for that.
Okay, yeah. So what's the process for writing the book? So you
write, your whole book, but you need to have your complete concepts kind of broken down and organized in a way that makes sense for a book format, and have samples of your writing to show, what you're trying to convey. And then you find a literary agent who then works with you. The thing about publishing a book is that when someone says they'll publish you, it could be a year to a year and a half before you get that product back. And that's a long time in kind of social media life. So that's why I'm kind of still exploring that option.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about the program. So if they do want to work together, tell me a little bit about how you decided what the different programs are, and how you decided to go that route.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. It's like sink or swim. So I think I for a little while, I thought very deeply about, what's the perfect way to get somebody in the door? What's the best way to work with someone? And you put a lot of thought into that, and then you start working with someone and you're like, oh, I had it all wrong. They actually want to do this. And so a lot of times I just throw out a program. I want it to be professional. I trust in the work I'm doing. So an example of that is I just started doing what I call a spirited nutrition reboot and cleanse. I did that this June, and I just put it out on Facebook and Twitter, and I got 11 people who signed up for that. And I had a low, it was a lower price bracket than I'll have a finished product in. The materials were just in basic PDF written form. And I worked with that. I let them know that as well. And I got great feedback from that. And it was a great success, I thought. So now I have all that material. I'll polish it up, kind of tweak it, and do that same cleanse again in November. And that'll be a regular offering that I have, 2 to 3 times a year. And that's really how most of my programs have evolved, is in that kind of format.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, that program. How much did you charge for that?
Well, for that program, I charged $200. And I have, because it was a cleanse, there were supplements that went with that for the cleanse. So most of that $200 went to the supplements. I don't know how much I'll charge in November for that, but it'll probably be $375, somewhere around there.
Okay. So that's interesting. How do you determine value? So because I know last time when I went to your website, you had, I think it was, to work with you, and there was you had put your fee, I think it was $1,800 at the time on your site, and you were telling me you're still figuring it out, which pretty much probably every entrepreneur that has a consulting business out there is figuring it out.
Right.
And we all think about, what do we charge? What is the value of what we're doing? And it's a tough thing to determine. And so how do you determine that? How did you determine your lower price point this time because you wanted feedback? And then how did you, now you're almost doubling it for the next time because you see there's so much value in it and you need to be compensated for all the work you're putting into it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, I think some of it's market analysis. Even as a service provider, there's a market. Other people are in that market, and so looking at what is commonly acceptable for the services that I offer, in combination with my experience or my clientele, there's a little bit of juggling with that. And I think that with the product and with the value, that having a scaling your price based on how much you're going to work with somebody one-to-one is how I've come up with that. Working with somebody one-to-one, that's the most value for them. Mm-hmm. When I work with somebody in my Mompreneur Wellness Transformation Program, which is my higher end coaching, I'm there for them completely. I hold their energy for them. I'm available by email. They can schedule, chats in between sessions. And I also see those clients as they're in my vision often. So I might be doing something, I'm like, oh, right, this would be so great for so-and-so. I'm going to make sure that I provide this for them, or, oh, that book would be perfect. And so I hold a lot of that space for somebody. Mm-hmm. So I feel comfortable that what I am charging them, they're going to have that return for. Something like my cleanse, or I have a wellness kickstart program, where it's more group-oriented and the paper's there, the work is really on the individual, then I tweak it down from that. With my cleanse, I scale it for who the person is. So you could go full on with the cleanse, you could adapt it, and I give them those options. So when I do the next cleanse with raising the price, I'll also have a Facebook group for it, so I can touch base with them, but it's not necessarily scheduling a call one-to-one work. Mm-hmm. But I'm providing a community for them to get feedback. Okay.
So what kind of feedback do you get from your clients? What's some typical things that you hear, and then how do you use that information in your business?
Right. Well, you said something that's very common, which is oh, that's totally doable. I can do that today. I'm going to go buy some lemons. So that's probably the biggest feedback that I get, is because my whole concept with nutrition is, I work with, women that are intelligent, they're educated. If you wanted to go full force, you could drop everything, that could be your focus. You could be I want to be a triathlete, whatever it is, but you're not doing that. And that's the clients that I work with. So I look at it as, we all want to be healthy enough, feel great, vibrant, so that we can engage with our kids, have the career we want, and really enjoy life without waking up just feeling totally like we're strung out on exhaustion.
Yeah.
So in that way, I've come up with a system that I know will help someone to take the foods out that I know can bring somebody down and add things in that work. And so doing that in a very simple step-by-step process that's doable is where I work from. And so people often, my clients, that's what they say, like, before I worked with you, this always felt so overwhelming, and you helped me see that it's not.
Talked a little bit about, you offer these programs and you have a book. How do you decide what you're going to do next? Is it,
again, for me, because I really feel that my business is an authentic expression of like my own journey, and I think that when things for me change, like I've been doing a lot more with young adults, and I have a feeling that I'm going to start bringing in that teenager aspect and young adult piece into it. And I've also started doing a lot more fitness stuff, which I think is a natural progression as my children have gotten older and I've come to have more space in my life. I do yoga more often. I've been teaching some yoga, and I've been feeling capable, I guess, of really taking on fitness more than a survival element to it. So I think I will probably bring that into my programs as well, which, isn't really there that much anymore, more than just encouraging somebody to get moving every day.
Right. It's so interesting. I love a lot of the things that you said, like when you said you're holding space for your clients and you're thinking about them, and how you have repeatedly said, this is your authentic journey as well. And I think that's something that resonates with me and most people who have started their own business, and you put it so beautifully. Like, it just kind of hit me when you said that. Like, you're right. This is all an expression of who we are and what we're going through. And as you evolve, as your children get older, so does your business, because you see things differently. And that's such a nice thing about having your own business and having your own passion and being able to make a living from that. How do you divide your day then? I mean, you have one-on-one consultations, you have group consultations, you're on social media. How does that all play in? You're one person, so you can only do so much.
Yes, right. Well, I schedule my coaching calls. I mean, it changes year to year based on school and childcare, but for the past about a year and a half, Tuesdays and Thursdays are coaching call days. I don't do any on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. I don't do coaching calls on Monday and Friday generally because there's always like some weird school thing that happens on those days, and I get all thrown off. And Tuesday and Thursday, by having that, it's like I can help channel my clients into those days. And then I also know if I needed if I had a childcare issue, I only have to cover those 2 days. So I can juggle that. And, every now and then somebody might need to change, and, I adapt to that, but that's, the exception.
Yeah. So when you got your 11 clients for the 21-day cleanse in July.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about that process. What did you use? Like, can you tell me what phrase did you use, or how did you engage them on Facebook and Twitter? Were these followers of yours already?
Yeah, everybody who signed up they were all people that were familiar with my work. And again, the one piece that I had, it was a 21-day cleanse, and a lot of the comments were, oh, I can do that. 21 days sounds doable.
Yeah.
Or a couple of people said, what does it exactly entail? And I would tell them, but I would let them know that you can scale it, that there's no way to fail. It's just about taking that first step. And that just by taking that first step, they're going to feel healthier and they're going to be making changes. So that was, really where it came from. And I didn't really even expect that much of a response to it. And I just was like, it's almost like sometimes I just get into the frame of mind where I'm like, I'm just going to blast it around. So I just kept doing that. It was really good for me to see that I wasn't received of like, oh my God, how annoying, like this cleanse thing again. And a lot of people would like it, or they'd say, oh, maybe next time, or summer's not a great time. So I had a lot of that kind of response as well. But that was also good feedback for me. And yeah, I was actually surprised. I have to say that it hasn't really happened that effortlessly for me in doing a program by just using social media. Usually it's a combination of steps.
Yes. So what do you think was different about that? When you tell me a little bit. Did you spend 1 week promoting this? Did you spend a month? How long did it take you? And did you promote it once a day or 5 times a day?
Yeah. Well, I usually, if I have a program running, I usually stop. Like I close registration a week beforehand, so I have time to kind of sift it all out and get organized with it. I lasted it out about probably 2.5 weeks before I was starting it. And that's another thing that I have found is that I used to think that, you know, if you talked about it for like 6 months, it would be like knocking down your door to get there. But then I realized for my type of client, it's really like, oh, wow, that sounds great. Oh, next week, yes, I can do that. And then they sign up for it. But we're not really planning that far in advance, most moms.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. I've been building up for all spring about my book, and I put out some information. I posted pieces of it here and there, and really had started creating an interest in the spiritual nutrition piece. So I think that I had people curious about an offering, and it was at a price point that was doable. I didn't have to make a huge commitment.
What is the one personal trait you find is most important as an entrepreneur?
Resilience and risk-taking, I think. They're both hand in hand.
So when you say resilience, tell me a little bit more, like, in experience. I mean, it's very, I still do marketing consulting, but for high-tech companies, and it's tough because you, in your role and in my role, you put yourself out there as a consultant.
Right.
So if somebody doesn't like the product, you can go back and, enough people say it, you can make a change to the product, but it's personal when it's you selling your service,
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many times where I've created this whole program, like, this is gonna be great, and nothing happens. Not even oh, sorry, this isn't the right time for me. It's just nothing, and I'll be like, oh God, that's awful. Was I so off my target? And that's where I really learned there is a language piece. There's some kind of magic that sometimes happens that helps people get ready. And I've also had that experience where no one has said anything, and then months later someone says, oh, and I saw you when you were doing that program. I was going through this or that in my life, and I just thought maybe someday. And so, I started to realize it's not always personal. Sometimes I'm sure it is. People will often be looking for that super cleanse or that raw food diet or something really, that they can put their head around and be like, I can achieve this.
Yes.
This big stuff. And that's great. And but I don't do that, with my clients. So that resilience piece is to just know that it's sometimes you do things and you may put out a bad product. It's just the way it is. I may have a bad offering. Other times my timing is off or my marketing is bad, and sometimes it's just I don't know. So yeah, you have to show up again. That's the whole part. And sometimes as a coach, sometimes I have calls with people where I may be trying to draw a hard line with them because I can hear something in that and they take a deep offense to it, or they don't want to call me back, or they want their money back. And sometimes I have to negotiate that. Other times I just get off the call and I think, ugh, they just paid me good money, and I don't know if that was my best day. I don't think today's my best day. And so I try to remember it's a bigger picture. You work with people over time, and they can't get into the head of I suck, you suck, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I wish you the best of luck. And hopefully I'll be able to jump on the cleanse board with you at some point. That's how I felt. I saw it in June. I was like, oh, it's never going to happen in June for me. That's not happening. In November, then I'm like, oh, the holiday. It's my birthday. And all that.
I know. There's always something like that.
There is. But, it's interesting because what you say definitely resonates as far as making something sustainable and manageable within your life, and not feeling like I didn't have a kale shake today in my life. I'm so upset with myself I didn't get those greens, It's okay, there's tomorrow, there's later. Things happen. You have 2 kids or 3 or who knows. So, well, thank you. I appreciate you being on. And for anybody who enjoyed this interview and wants to learn more, you can go to www.bestmomproducts.com or mompreneurwellness.com, and I'll have both those links on the site. I'll have it underneath you for the beginning and the ending of the video as well. So.